What we don't talk about is at what cost, right? At what cost is striving for scale and revenue and profits actually going to cost you? And that is missing your kids', soccer game. It's missing birthday parties, weddings, anniversaries, baby showers. Uh, y'all, it ain't worth it.
How do you keep growing your business without your life becoming completely chaotic, stressful, and overwhelming? That is the theme of the show today on Wealthy and Well Known. This is the podcast that is meant to help you build your personal brand so that you can grow your influence, your impact, and your income. As always, I'm joined by my co-founder, co-author, best friend, beautiful wife, AJ Vaden. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. So glad I'm here.
Well, you're on the hot seat today because we're talking about scaling a business. You are the CEO of Brand Builders Group. You're also the CEO of Mission Driven Press, Nashville Creative Spaces. So we run 3 different businesses. You manage 3 P&Ls. We bought a building last year, remodeled the building. We are on this very day moving into a house that we have been building for 2 years. We've lived in 3 rental homes over the course of that time. We've got 2 kids that are homeschooled.
Not by me.
But we got a lot going on. And by we, I mostly mean you. And you are the one who's managing most of that. And so we want to talk about how do you increase revenue while keeping your hours flat or even reducing them? And I want to start with that question. I want you to share what your work schedule is and how it is evolved in terms of hours per week you worked when we started in our first business versus how many hours per week do you officially work on like work-related business stuff now?
Yeah. Wow, there's so much in that introduction. And I just, I think it's really important to start with just a high level reflection of, I most certainly do not have this figured out. Nor do you. Right. And this is not a conversation today of, let me tell you all the things we've learned and how you can do it too. This is a journey. And there have been some really good lessons we've learned and we've implemented. There are some that I am most certainly still learning and adjusting. So I just want to preface that this is a journey for all of us. And I think where I would love to see this conversation go today is not about how you grow revenue and you shorten your hours. I think that's, in my opinion, the wrong way to look at this. And instead of going like, what's the best and highest use of my time in each season of life and what can come out of that? And I think that's been a difference of viewpoints of why my schedule was what it is and what it is today. And if your main goal and your main focus is just to grow revenue, to scale your business, to, grow revenues and increase profits, then I think you do have the great temptation to overwork yourself because everything is subservient to the ambitious goals that you have. And I think that's an unhealthy place to be. And I can only say that because that was me for a really, 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 really long time.
Tell us that story. Where did we start? How much were you working? What was that ambition like?
I think it was just what you said. It was like what you hear from everyone around you and even what you tell yourself is, you work harder, set bigger goals, work longer hours, work till your eyes bleed, right? And there's some of that in that hustle culture mentality is like, don't get me wrong, we work hard. Like, and I have high work ethic expectations for our team. I believe that there is value in hard work. I believe that hard work produces a character in a person that is invaluable. Knowing how to work hard and do things right is absolutely a skill set that I believe in, invest in. And this is not saying like, I don't work hard. I work really hard with constraints. And I think the constraints are the part that are really important because if you don't have constraints on how hard you work, then it becomes all about your own efforts. And you forget that nothing happens by yourself, right? And I think when we live in this world of like, just put in more hours, just work longer, uh, what we start to believe about ourselves is that we're doing all of it. And you're never the one doing all of it, right? This is no surprise, but I am very big into my faith. And it's like I first and foremost realized in my previous life that I was trying to do it all on my own, is I was all doing it through the lens of striving and proving, which was I'll outwork everybody. I'll prove to everyone that I am just as a hard worker. I'm just as successful. I'll produce the most revenue. I'll make the most money. But that was out of a striving and approving for approval of my peers, right? And it was a culture in which it was like I took a lot of pride in having 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks. But what doesn't get talked about is how you have no friends. You have no life. You have no time with the Lord. I had no time to have reflection. I had no time to work out. It was work, 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 work. And yeah, did that produce a lot of revenue? Sure did. Did it also produce a lot of unhealthy habits and loneliness and no social life and a lot of regrets? Sure did. And so I think those are where the constraints are really important. And I think when a lot of people talk about you just got to work harder, you just got to be longer hours, more time at the office, what we don't talk about is at what cost, right? At what cost is striving for scale and revenue and profits actually going to cost you? And that is missing your kids' soccer game. It's missing birthday parties, weddings, anniversaries, baby showers. Y'all, it ain't worth it.
I think
It's just not worth it.
one of the most defining characteristics between our first business and our second business was the hours we allowed ourselves to work. Our first business, we worked 14 hours a day, maybe not 14 hours a day, but we were working by 8 a.m., definitely till
10
like
to 12 hours a day
8,
was a
8,
very
8 p.m.,
normal,
6
a
p.m., 8
very normal
p.m.
day.
For sure, 10 to 12 hours. And I remember in the very beginning, it was 6 days a week. For me, it was
And I
6
think,
days a week.
and some of that is to be expected in a heavy startup season, right? It's just like, yeah, you should expect to have no sleep when you have a new baby, right? There are seasons of like, it's going to be intense. You just can't let those seasons become your life.
Right.
I think that's the thing. It's like there are going to be those spurts and seasons of like, it's the end of year. I'm doing budgets. It's intense. I'm working more hours right now than is normal for me, right? Just like if you're a CPA, season is your harvest season, right? It's going to be more intense. A new baby, all of the things. What's important is not that you don't do that. It's that you don't let it become your life.
Right. And I think when we started Brand Builders Group, our second business, we said we are going to stop at 5 p.m. And if we can't achieve something between the hours of 8 and 5, then we're going to trust that the Lord doesn't want us to have that. And if he does want us to have it, he will fill in the gap and he will do the rest. And that to me is the most definitive difference between our mindset and our attitude and the practicality of our schedule between our first and our second business.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that it's a hard stop at 5 every single day. Some days I end earlier than 5. Some days definitely linger after 5. I think the heart shift that happens, that I think has to happen with every individual, doesn't matter what your role is what are you doing it for? And I think that's the most important conversation with scale. What are you doing it for? What are you scaling for? I remember at an event that we had at Brand Builders Group a couple of years ago, someone raised their hand and they were just like, I'm on the path to 7 figures. Like, that's my goal. And I just said, well, tell me why. Why do you want to hit 7 figures? And it was like, I thought it was going to be like some profound answer. And he was like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I can't answer your question until you can tell me why you want to hit 7 figures. Like, what is it that going to do to you? And I think a lot of us, we set these goals, but we don't even know why. And when we get really honest with ourselves, we go, oh, maybe that was for the wrong reason. And I think that's where it becomes unhealthy, is when we set these huge, audacious goals for the wrong reasons. It's not that you shouldn't set huge goals. I set huge goals. It's important. The reason is important. And I think that's important contextually, of like, you got to not set it by yourself. And I think that's another thing about scale is, are you forcing it? Is your team on board with it? Is your family on board with it? Because those are family and team decisions. Those are not owner, founder, and individual decisions, because you don't scale by yourself. You don't grow by yourself. That requires a team. It requires your family. It requires your spouse. It includes a unified commitment from everyone around you. Otherwise, you're just dragging everyone around with you, and there's bitterness and resentment and tension. And then that's when stress and burnout comes, is because you're dragging everyone along with you on some goal that you've set that you didn't include anyone else on. So, as we're talking about scale and growing without burnout, I think that often happens because you didn't do it as a team. You didn't make this goal. You didn't plan this goal as a family or a team, depending if it's a personal or professional goal. And all of a sudden, you're outpacing everyone because they're like, we weren't on board with this. And that's where I think a lot of the stress and the burnout comes from. The other thing I would say about the limit to the hours, here's one of the things that I have learned about the limiting to the hours is something that you actually talked about. Maybe in Take the Stairs, maybe in Procrastinate on Purpose. I don't know. They're blurring together at the moment, but it's the law of Douglas MacArthur,
Mm.
right? You want to tell everyone about the law of Douglas MacArthur?
Yes. The law of Douglas MacArthur says the amount of busy work always expands to fill whatever amount of time you allow to be available.
And I think that is why we put limits on our schedule. It was yes, because it was like, hey, Lord, we're going to trust that if you want it done, it'll be done. But that was also from recognizing we'll always find work to do. There's always an email to check. There's always a project to catch up on. I will find work to do, right? That is not the problem. I think for a lot of people, rest is the harder choice.
Mm-hmm.
Not doing anything and knowing that you're still good enough resting. I think for me, my addiction has always been work. I think we're all addicted to something. Mine has always been work. Right. It has been something I've had to control and temper. It's something I'm very self-aware of. It's a discipline for me to not work.
It's a very mature decision to reach the place where you say, I am consciously, deliberately, intentionally okay with achieving less.
Yeah.
If working less means I will have less, I'm okay with less. And that took both of us a long time to get to.
And still getting to. So I think it's just really important to go, the hours you work do not necessarily mean more revenue or scale or more profits. More hours worked does not necessarily equate to growth or scale. It just doesn't.
So tell me the difference between growth and scale, because not everybody understands this. And if you don't understand this, it literally can ruin your life.
Yeah. Growth, and this is how we define it. Growth means that your expenses grow at the same intensity that revenue does, right? So revenues are growing, which is what everyone talks about. Revenue. I know I've never met anyone or heard anyone talk about their expenses, right? It's like growth means that expenses are growing at the same intensity, at the same rate as revenue, right? Everyone talks about how do you grow a seven-figure business, have a six-figure launch. I know one talking about how many expenses it took to get there. But I think that's important. Expenses and revenue grow at the same rate. That is growth. Scale happens when revenue continues to grow, but expenses flatline, right?
Boom.
It's that pivot point where you no longer need to keep spending, to keep adding, to keep growing. That's the difference between growth and scale.
Yeah. So I think that's a really key distinction. So I have a question. Why do we scale? Why do you scale, right? You're presenting an important part of this conversation, which is to go, why? Are you even clear on why are you growing in the first place? Why are you going to make these sacrifices? Why are you going to work that hard? In our case, why are we going to take the financial risks of investing in people and products and, now buildings and stuff? And so I don't know that you and I have necessarily talked specifically about that. So, we now have two kids and, we've got scaling businesses. Why have but I'm really curious, like genuinely, why have you chosen to scale?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know if it has been a choice per se. I don't think that I've sat down and go, hey, I am intentionally choosing to grow.
Hmm.
And I think that's a decided difference between this business and our last business, which was very much I will force this to happen. I will might this to happen. I will give it all my will, all my energy to make it happen. And a lot of that was driven from my own striving, my own proving. And when we started this business, it was different. Different in the sense of I felt like God gave us this business. And I can really say for the first time in my life that I'm doing my life's work. And so I think there's some of this where, yes, some days feel like work. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Some days definitely feel like work. But for the most part, this doesn't really feel like work to me.
Mm,
This is my ministry. This is my life's calling. And my hope would be that for all of you who are listening, that you get the privilege and the opportunity to do that. That you get the opportunity to go, this isn't work. This is your ministry. This is your life's calling, that you're doing something that you're uniquely positioned to do, and you get to grow it. You don't have to grow it. You get to grow it. So I cannot tell you that I've sat down. I'm like, this is how we're going to scale. This is how we're going to grow. My attitude for the last 7 years has been, we'll go as, fast as we can, as slow as we have to. We'll grow it as big as it can be without forcing it. And so a lot of it has been organic, a lot of it has been natural, and I think a lot of it has been the byproduct of really loving what we do, solving a need that was clearly present in the marketplace, and getting really clear on who we serve. I
mm,
think that the growth and scale has been a byproduct of those things. Specifically the growth. The scale took more tweaking and some, adjusting along the way, but I think a lot of it really is, it's like when when you're doing the thing that you were meant to do and you're doing it well, not that we can't do things better, we can. I'll be the first to say that. But when you're doing the things that you're meant to do and you do them well and you really try to serve people, even if it's not perfect, but you're trying, I have just always found things do grow. Healthy things grow.
healthy things grow. And that is, I would underscore and say, another big difference between our first business and our second business was our first business felt more like we were serving a number on a page. We would have a budget season, we would lock in on a number,
And
and
go
then
after
all
it.
that mattered was like hitting that number. In this business, it's more like we're serving a person, and there's two groups of people that I think that we serve. One is our customers, and we go, what can we do that will help our customers succeed faster? And the other thing that I think about in terms of scale a lot is our team, is how can we hire better
Mhm.
people? How can we pay them more money? How can we create more career opportunity for people inside of our walls here? And out of that, serving the people, the business has grown. And
Yeah.
just for context, we got to eight figures with our second business in about half the time we got to eight figures in our first
But
business.
I think that's a natural byproduct. And I don't want to sit here and be like, we did everything wrong in our first business.
No,
The reason that we've been able to grow faster in our second business is because of everything we learned the first go around.
that's right. And we built a reputation in that first
Invaluable
business.
skills
Yeah.
that as a beginner entrepreneur would have been impossible for me to gain and learn. Being able to sit in the boardrooms and be a part of financial audits. All my finance skills were learned through the mentorship and leadership in our first business. So I'm so grateful for so much that I learned there that we have been able to apply here. But I think one of the things that you said something made me think about this is this quote from Craig Rochelle. And I think this is really
Mm,
important. It's like he always says, you can have control or you can have growth. You cannot have both. And that is something that I have been working on. It's like if I want growth, then I cannot have control. And that, in my opinion, is where scale starts to happen. I think when you realize, oh, I can't be a part of every meeting. I can't be a part of every decision. I can't oversee every finance. I can't sign off on every expense. I cannot do all the things. At some point, if you really want to scale, or if you are scaling, even if you didn't want to, it's just happening, you have to realize, oh, you no longer get to have control. And I think for some people, they can't release it, which is why burnout happens. I think a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm, and a lot of burnout for entrepreneurs, founders, executives, uh, even frontline, salespeople. It's like the burnout happens when you cannot release control. And that, in my opinion, is where most businesses actually become stagnant. That's where they plateau, is because the owner and the founder cannot release control. They will not allow their leadership team to lead. They can't allow other people to make big decisions because they've been the one doing it the whole time. And it's not that they don't trust their team. It's like, it's always been me. This is a habit you have to unlearn. It is a skill you have to unlearn. It is something that you have to release and to surrender. And those things are scary.
hmm
And those things take time. And I don't think it's because you hired the wrong people or it's like, no, like those are big, long habits that you now have to unwind. And a lot of that does happen, has to happen in order for scale to take place.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there about if you go in order to scale, you have to become a different person. And one of the mindset shifts that has to happen is that shift between control and growth. Another mindset shift that must happen for someone to scale, I think, is you have to let go of perfection.
Mhm.
And it's connected to this issue of control because you got to where you are by doing everything right and doing everything perfectly, but you can't do it all yourself and continue to grow. And so this is something we talk about in Procrastinate on Purpose, which is 80% done right by someone else is always better than 100% done perfectly accurate by you. Or not always, but almost always.
Yeah.
And that is the requirement in order to scale is to go, I have to deliberately, intentionally, purposefully be willing to accept less than perfect for a short window of time by somebody else to go, I could do this better than you, but I'm going to be okay with you doing it and it being imperfect for a short window so that you can learn how to do it. Because long term, if I do it myself, I create a prison of my own construction and I create a life sentence for myself to have to do it versus that little imperfection window is painful for a limited time, but then over the long term, you create people around
Yeah.
who do things. And one of my favorite quotes from it's in our second book, Procrastinating on Purpose, but it's not from me. It's from a multiplier, Troy, that we interviewed. And he said, you reach a point when you start scaling, you realize my job is not to do, my job is to make sure it gets done. And if those switches don't flip, you're never going to scale.
Yeah, I remember Troy in that conversation was like, if I'm doing something, something has gone terribly wrong. But that is, I think one of the things that we get asked a lot of time, well, how do you know when to hire? Like how do you know when is the right time to hire if you can't be the one to do everything? And before we answer that, I think there are two life questions that you have to ask yourself. And I actually heard this on an interview you did with Mike McAllowitz
Mm,
years ago, and I've really held on to it. And here are the two life questions that any entrepreneur needs to ask themselves as they're starting a business, ideally at the beginning before you start. But if not, you can ask them at any time. Number one, is this a business you're growing to keep or to sell?
mm,
Because those are two distinctly different paths. And I think that's really important, right? Is this a lifestyle business
definitely.
or is this a business that you are growing to sell? That's important. That's the first question. The second is, do you want employees? Yes or no? And those are the two most important questions for you to get clear on as an entrepreneur is, are you growing this to keep it or to sell it? And do you want employees? Yes or no? And
And if you're growing it to sell it, you probably are going to have employees.
that
So that one
one,
kind of comes together.
right? And I think those are two, and neither are right or wrong. They just are. And it's whatever is right for you at the different stage of your life and your own personality and your own desires and wants. But I think those are really important questions to ask and to yourself and to have clear answers before you pick a path. Otherwise, things happen unintentionally by default. And again, that's where I think people get stressed, overwhelmed, and burned out is the reasons they started all of a sudden disappeared. They started because they loved this. And the next thing you know, the only thing they do is file taxes and big paperwork. That's not why they started. And it's because they lost sight of, am I doing this to grow it and sell it? Or am I doing it because I love it and it's a lifestyle? Do I want employees? Yes or no? Those are simple but not easy questions to ask.
Hmm.
But once you have the answers to those, uh, when are you ready to hire someone? Because if you are growing and scaling at some point, you're going to come to that place where you cannot do it on your own any longer. I don't have a perfect answer. I can only give you my answer.
I'm
And
curious to hear this because I have a clear answer too. I wonder how much these are aligned.
we'll see. We'll see. You guys can rate how closely related were they. Here's what I have found is the first thing that I have to do is I have to set up my own boundaries, my own parameters of what I'm allowed to say yes and no to. And this has been a lifelong journey to figure those out. Some of those are schedule boundaries. Some of those are people boundaries. Some of those are commitment boundaries. And I'll give you examples to some of those. Like I have a commitment that I need mom time with my boys before 5 p.m., 2 days a week. Right. So I end work earlier on Fridays. I have a shorter Friday and I get to pick my kids up from school on Tuesday. Those are boundaries and commitments that I have to be a healthy, happy CEO and also to be a mom who does not suffer from guilt. If I don't have those things, I have an unhappy family and I have an unhappy workforce. Neither are good, right? And I think the first thing is like a healthy leader makes a healthy team. An unhealthy leader makes an unhealthy team. Same goes for parenting. An unhealthy parent makes an unhealthy family. So I just know on the weeks where I don't get to do those things, I'm a torn individual. And it's like, well, I can't do anything good. And it's because I didn't stick to my boundaries and my commitments. In order for me to be present at work, I need time with my kids. For me to be present with my kids, I need time at work. I'm not trying to overlap the two. So firm set boundaries. That'd be one clear example. Another clear example is I can't be in 8 hours of calls and meetings and the team expect me to do my job. I can't. So I have put boundaries on I'm allowed this many hours of calls and meetings per day. If it exceeds that, it has to be pushed. That
Is that
means
different every day or is it the same number?
I have different every day.
Okay.
Depends on the day of the week. But I will tell you right now, some people get very annoyed of like, you're telling me you can't schedule a call with me for 5 weeks. And the answer is no, I could schedule a call with you before then, but that would be sacrificing the commitments and the boundaries that I've set for myself, my family, and my team. So I could, but I'm not. That means you have to get really comfortable and really good at how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been an art in and of itself of learning the art of saying no. Because a lot of us, that's a real struggle and we squeeze it in. But then all we're doing is we're breaking our promises that we've already made to ourselves, to our team, and to our
I
family.
mean, you're always saying no. You're either saying no to
Yep.
that person or you're saying no to the commitments you made to somebody else. So it's like you can't go through life not saying no. It's just
So
what are you saying no
you,
to?
as an individual, I'm just talking to entrepreneurs, you have to set your boundaries. What are the commitments that you're going to make? For me, I start with what are my commitments to the Lord? What are the commitments to my family? What are the commitments to the team? That's the order that I go, right? And I fit in with family. Like I have to work out. Like if I don't have physical exertion 3 or 4 times a week, I'm a crazy person. I have chaos energy. I told Rory the other day, I was like, I'm Shadow from Sonic 3, right? If I do not have physical exertion 3 or 4 times a week, I am just like Shadow running around that orb at the very end, creating chaos. I have to release it. It is for the health of everyone around me that gets out at hot yoga, not on a phone call, right? So those are the things you have to know about yourself. And you have to put those self-care things in there first. Like if I don't do my Bible study in the morning, I'm a grouch. Like I need my time with the Lord to have a peaceful start to my day. Those are the boundaries and commitments that it's like, if I don't do that, everyone else suffers in the wake of my uncommitment. That is the first and foremost. Set your commitments and your boundaries of like, what makes you a healthy, happy leader? That has to happen first. And so if it doesn't build in the boundaries of those, then I know there's too much work for me to do. And it's like, it is a basic law of economics, supply and demand. When there is more demand on my time than I have supply, then I start looking at, I follow Rory's focus funnel. Like I do. It's like, okay, what needs to be eliminated? What needs to be delegated? What needs to be automated? What needs to just be procrastinated on? Or what needs my attention right now? I follow the focus funnel. Like I really do. And it's like, when I realize can't be eliminated, it has to be done and it has to be by me. I'm looking at the team around me and I'm going, who is this going to? Right. And if there is no one, I'm going to start making a job description because someone has to do this. It can't be me. But it really is. But it does start. And I think that's the most important thing of going, don't break your commitments to yourself.
And that would be my answer in terms of when do you hire someone? It is when there is work that must be done that you don't have time to do it. That's when you start making the job description. But here's what most people do. Most people say, I'll hire someone when I can afford to hire them. And it's never worked that way. It's never been like, we've got extra money lying around, let's go hire the person.
Yeah.
You think like everyone when they're starting as an entrepreneur, they all think, oh, that person has a big team because they have a lot of money. And it's the opposite. They have a lot of money because they have a team and they invest in the team and eventually the money comes. But in the beginning, all you're doing is shelling out money to people on your team. And that's what's scary. And that's where the risk
It
comes
is, and
in.
that is where the risk comes, and I think and that's where being a healthy financial fiduciary of your business is a part of your job as founder, entrepreneur, CEO, whatever your role is. I think everyone has responsibility of being a financial fiduciary if you work for a company, because if you're not and other people aren't, everyone's job is at risk. Like, it doesn't matter what your role in the company, your job is to be a financial fiduciary of that company because that's how you get paid, right? Is the, the success of the company. But like to that point, I think a lot of businesses fail ultimately because they just ran out of runway. They ran out of money. And so knowing when to spend the money, knowing when to hire is really important. And what we have always found, it's like, as long as my time is freed up, I know I can produce more revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know that. I don't always know if I free up somebody else's time, can they produce more revenue? I don't always know that, but I know if I can free up my time, more revenue is on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, again, that's a mentality that we have chosen as business owners of, oh, we're always going, how do we help generate revenue? That isn't an outsourced skill set. It doesn't mean people don't help us. They most certainly do. But at the end of the day, our job is to make sure the company has enough financial runway to continue to be in business. That's a responsibility you own as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and that's a big mindset shift. And I, genuinely, when I think of like my favorite like productivity books, I genuinely would put Procrastinate on Purpose as one of them. Another one that I would put on there is Dan Martell's book, right? Buy Back Your Time. And one of the distinctions he makes so sharply in that book that I really agree with, and seeing it in writing was like, definitely, is he says, hire to take things off your plate, right? Don't just hire like, oh, I think we need a VP of marketing. It's like, no, what you need is to hire someone to free up your time. So whatever is taking your personal time, that's where you need to hire.
That's how every job description should start. And then it just continually scales from there. It's like, as one thing gets off your plate and new things come on your plate, eventually those fall off your plate and that's a new job. And then that process continues on and on and on and on. And that's eventually how a team grows.
A great example of this last year was we hired a head of people.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, is that a position that we need? And you were like, talking to me, you're like, you have no idea how much time I'm spending on benefits and HR and internal meetings and agendas and planning our conferences and travel and KPIs. And I was like, okay, wow. I did not realize that is going, oh, well, I guess we do. So from my vantage point, it felt like we were too young as a company to need that position. But from your vantage point, you're like, I am buried in a list of stuff. And it was like, okay, let's go. Like, we got to go get the person. And we got someone who's awesome. And yeah, so that's really good. Rapid fire round here real quick. And then we'll get into community questions. We got a big community question. So what do you think are the mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they're trying to scale? What are like the biggest things that they mess up?
That they try to scale.
Without knowing why?
Yeah, like genuinely. And it's not only not knowing why, it's that they try to scale before they're ready. I think that happens a lot. We want to get bigger before we have the right systems in place to support that. One of the biggest mistakes that I have just read about, seen, never firsthand, but is, the rise and fall of tech companies. And, there's lots of documentaries. There's like, but I find these really fascinating of they scaled before they had systems to support the scale. And if the infrastructure isn't there, the growth will implode the company. And I like, let's not forget that. It's like, it can be an exciting ride. And then one day it all comes crashing down.
One of the most impactful things that has happened to me over the last year was the story that you found for our book about Chick-fil-A. And
with Truett Cathy.
With Truett Cathy. I don't know what chapter is that in our book, chapter 7 or something. By the way, you can go to freebrandAudiobook.com/podcast and just download the book. But if you go to that chapter, I think it is monetization strategy where we talk
Chapter
about
7.
scale. Is the lesson where Truett said, if we focus on getting better, our audience will demand that we get bigger. And that was like a really clarifying moment for me, was to go, don't focus on getting bigger, focus on getting better. And if you focus on get better, you'll get bigger. And I think that sums up the difference between our two entrepreneurial journeys, our first company and second company, in some ways. We've been really focused on getting better at Brand Builders Group, and we're getting bigger as a result of that.
And I think that's true for any business owner, any entrepreneur. It's don't outgrow your systems, right? Don't outgrow your systems. You cannot scale without the necessary infrastructure in place to support it. And when you don't have it there is when it becomes toxic and unhealthy, and uh it all really does start to fall apart, starting with you, because now you're working double time, overtime, even with the support team, because you just didn't have the infrastructure to support the amount of clients or team members that you brought on. We talk about this often at Brand Builders Group, and we go, I don't know why so many of us are talking about, growing our social media audiences or all the things that we're doing when most people only need a few dozen extra clients. Not thousands, not hundreds, just a couple of dozen. Most people, if they doubled their client load, they couldn't even handle it. And yet we're trying to figure out how to do all these magnificent things. And it's like, just pick up the phone and call somebody, ask for referrals. And I think a lot of that is we forget there's not a lot you need to actually have some healthy growth and healthy scale. You don't have to double, triple, quadruple your business in order to experience monumental growth for a lot of us. But I do think it's really important. It's like serving 5 clients is very different than serving 25 clients. Serving 50 is different than serving 25, 100. And it's like you have to be able to support that infrastructure before the clients come. Otherwise, it implodes. And I think that's why how to scale is the wrong question. Not just because you don't know why, which you do need to know, is that you're trying to scale at all. You've got to have the order correct. And the proper systems, processes, and people have to be in place before you actually start to scale.
Okay, next question. How do you determine what to pay people when you're hiring, especially when you're starting out and you really don't have a lot of revenue or money? Like, what is some of the compensation philosophy of, like, how do you afford people before you can really afford them? And then, like, how do you adjust that over time, or give us a little bit about that?
This is a whole episode. Oh my gosh, what a Pandora's box
Let's
you just
do
opened.
let's do it. Let's do an episode. We'll do a whole episode on this.
I think we should do a whole, because I think that's Pandora's box. And I think it's that you can't even answer that question properly. It's like, is this a brand new position? Or is this a position that already exists in the company, right? Those are two very different plans. Are you a startup company or are you established, right? Is this person learning a new job, or are they coming with expertise and experience, right? Are you hiring virtual, or is it mandated to be in person? Do you have benefits or not? Is there a bonus or a commission plan or not? This is an entire episode. But here's what I would say at a very high level. Often when you're starting, you're going to probably not pay someone exactly what they're worth, and they're going to be coming on because they believe in the mission, they believe in the potential, and that there's an upside. So I would say a lot of people get hired on, at least this is how we've done it, is like there's a lower base and there's a higher pay for performance opportunity, whether it's a bonus, a KPI bonus, or a commission plan that allows you to hire someone with what you can afford in a base, but it gives them the potential to make more income by selling or delivering or performance of the company when you can't afford the base that this person could have earned somewhere else. But you're hiring someone not just because of money. And I think that's probably my big takeaway. It's like, if people only come to you because of the dollars on the page, they'll leave you just as fast. It has to be more about the paycheck. It has to be, am I going to enjoy the work? Who I'm enjoying with? Is there certain freedoms? Like, can I work from home? Can I travel? Can I earn more? Is there bonus potential? Is there benefits? It has to be more about money. It can't just be about the dollars on a page, because they will leave you just as fast as they came. On that note, that'll be a good, healthy transition to move into one of our favorite segments of the show, which is when we do a question from our community, where we take a whole bunch of questions, post from our community. They pick which is their favorite one, and that question makes it to you here on the show. So today's question is, how do I say no without burning a bridge?
This is so good. Really important and relevant. I've struggled with saying no for a big part of my life. I always wanted to say yes. And it was really once we started building our family that was like, I have to start saying no to some things. And it was a really big struggle with me. And here's the game that I learned how to play that I think made a big difference for me personally was I make a game of saying no and still being super duper nice. And that epiphany for me was to go, I can say no and be nice. We did a blog on this. I think I did a blog on my blog about this a while ago. I haven't looked at it, but we made an acronym out of NICE, NICE. I think the N is notice the person's value, right? So someone asks you to coffee and you're like, oh, that's so kind. I love what you're doing. It's, and then the I is indicate interest. It's like, man, if I had all the time in the world, I would love to come and sit down with you and learn more about what you're doing because it's really, really important. And then the C is competing priorities. But and so you just kind of articulate to them. You go, right now, I'm in a really tight season right now with my family, my business. We're moving houses, we're writing a book, right? And it's just so it's like, man, if I had all the time in the world, I would do this. I just have really competing priorities. And then you kind of explain clearly that you're not going to be able to do it, but you offer them alternatives.
Yeah.
And so you go, well, I can't meet with you in person. Here's a podcast episode that I picked out that I think would be super helpful. Here's an article I found. Here's a book I would recommend. Here's someone I think that you should follow, or here's a quick bit of advice and encouragement. So that's what the E is encouragement. So you kind of encourage them in their journey, and that's just sort of the game. And you just have to do this, and it does kill me. It's like I get invites to like come speak at things or meet with people, and it's like if time, like in eternity, like when eternity comes around, it's like, yeah, I love that. I'm so flattered. If I'm saying yes to them, I'm saying no to you. I'm saying no to the boys.
You just tell them my wife said no. My wife said no.
That's the short answer.
I think that's really good. And it's like mine is similar. It's like I don't have a fancy acronym like you do. My very succinct, kind of like what I heard you say, and what my philosophy is always focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. It's very simple. And it's like, doesn't matter what the request is. I try to focus on what I can do, not what I can't do. So I always lead with what I can do while also making it clear what I can't do. But I lead with what I can do. Like I'll give you a one quick snippet. Like here recently, I got asked to do a book endorsement, and it's someone who I really love, and I really love the book. And it was right after our book launch, in the middle of our budget season, in the middle of moving a house. And it's like they had a very short turnaround, 60 days. And I won't write an endorsement if I can't read the book, right? And I was like, I want to say yes to this, and I can't. I cannot. Like that is an overcommitment of epic proportion. And so when I got asked, I responded with, hey, what I would love to do is to do a live story promoting your book on launch week. I do not have capacity or time because of all these reasons to do a quality endorsement. However, I can put time on my calendar right now for your launch week. I would love to go live and promote your book for you. And I did. And I did go live on their launch week and did a huge endorsement and got live and did a whole thing about their book launch, but I could not do the endorsement. I couldn't do it. And so it's just focusing on what you can do while also being really clear on what you can't do, but lead with what you can, not what you can't.
So good. Well, there you have it, friends. Hopefully some advice, encouragement, insights, most of all, just lessons and experience shares from us struggling through this. As AJ mentioned, we do not have this figured out. We have come a long way from where we've started, and we've made some improvements from mistakes. So we hope it's an encouragement to you. If there's somebody that you think of when you're listening to this episode who's struggling with some of this, please feel free to share this. We would love for you to just find one person that you send this episode to and keep coming back here so that we can keep you encouraged on your journey. We're so grateful for you. We'll catch you next time on Wealthy and Well Known.